afternoon, everyone. Yes, this is what I'm going to talk about today. Just to give you a little bit of context, 9 years ago, we created that platform called Avid Expert with the idea of showing. I was put by the universities to interact with the media. I was stationed at RTS, and I saw how many journalists were looking for experts and how they were constantly looking for the same experts or different experts, but not finding the way to put this information all together. So the idea was to help journalists identify experts, but also to demonstrate how incredibly engaged journalists and experts are in Western Switzerland to transmit information and scientifically validated information to the general public. So this platform gathers all the videos, audios, all the interviews of experts speaking in their own field of knowledge, specifically not outside of their field of knowledge, into Radio-Télévision Suisse, the national French-speaking media. So this was, it was actually quite a surprise to see that there were so many in 9 years. And of course, I wanted to use this information to help journalists identify the right expert at the right time on the right topic. Because here is the same, in Avid Expert, it's the same as in Google. You Google, for instance, climate, or you typed climate in Avid Expert, you have 500 videos with 80 researchers talking about it. And how do you know which is the right one that you need for your information? So what we needed through that was a compass to navigate through information, and we created, thanks to a financing by IMI, Compass Sciences. It's a semantic mapping tool that connects knowledge, experts, and media content. So what you can see here is the map in Avid Expert, the map of all the videos and audios that were translated to speech to text, and then analyzed semantically to give all the field around the word climate. So this way you can navigate in this map, you can zoom in, zoom out, have more distinct idea of what is going on, but you can also add the experts to the map and know who is talking about it in the media. And you can also zoom in for every specific expert, and then you can see what are their own fields of information. So you can also click on one expert and you have their own, all the way they intervene in the media when they speak about their field of knowledge. For instance, this one. And then you can also access directly the media content. Here you have all the audios and videos. You can sort them by expert, by gender, by TV or radio show, by university, by anything you want that could be useful to you as a journalist. And if you click on the little link, you can also listen to the audio or see the video and see how this expert is speaking well or having some difficulties with some questions, or what were the last questions that were asked of them or something like this. So this is what we developed over the past year. And we also developed a dashboard that for every single term that you can think of tells you the history of this term, how it was treated in Radio-Télévision Suisse, in the media, by whom, and what was the gender balance, in which show it was addressed, and which institution, and things like this. And what you see in blue is what you would expect from the data. And what you see in red is what you actually observe. So in some terms, we noticed, for instance, if you take terms like child or women or gender equality, you see that you would expect women and men to speak more or less equally, but it's definitely women who speak about it much, much more. So you can see who the journalists are calling in the media to talk about specific topics. And this is respective of the representation of these topics, the gender representations of these topics in universities. You cannot expect, for instance, journalists to have a 50-50 gender balance when they speak, when they ask questions about quantum physics, because in the universities, the gender balance is not that, you know. So you can see that sometimes they improve the gender balance of our universities, but sometimes they just maintain the right balance. So from this, we decided to go one step further, actually 2 steps further. One was to help journalists identify new experts, because what I showed you before were the experts that are talking at Radio-Télévision Suisse. So granted, there is 3,300 of them. The journalists don't know all of them, but maybe some of them they know fairly well. So the idea was to help journalists and identify people they didn't know yet. And also check if our system would work adapted to a new database, and that would be a multilingual database. So what we took was the Swiss National Science Foundation P3 database. It gathers all the experts in Switzerland that are financed for their research, not for talking in the media, but for their real research projects by the Swiss National Science Foundation. And we applied our software to it. And the idea was also to check the fact that this database is in German, Italian, French, and English, and to see how robust the analysis would be. So to do this, we translated all languages to English, and we applied the software, and then we will sort it again by language. Right now, we are still in that process. And what happened is that it worked really, really well, because we're working also with written data, so it's very, very sturdy. And we can see here the journalists that are, the topics that are addressed in science in Switzerland. And of course, as we saw before, we can see who is doing this in Switzerland. And in the different universities, like before, we can have them in the graph. You can select each person according to their own field of knowledge. And you can see their request at the SNSF and sort it also again by institute, by language, by gender, etc. So the idea, of course, after that is to merge the two systems to see if journalists are addressing scientists in their own field of knowledge, or if they are asking them to speak in the media in fields that are slightly different from their own field, and how they can shift a little bit information that way. So the other idea was to help journalists, of course, identify not only new experts, but new topics. And for this, we tried to see if we could compare two databases and enrich semantic analysis with new topics. And for that, we used Wikipedia. And what you can see here in blue is the P3 database, the one with all the scientists in Switzerland, financed by the Swiss National Science Foundation. And in red, you have Wikipedia. So in blue, it's what scientists in Switzerland are most working on with respect to climate change. And in red is what Wikipedia is most addressing with respect to climate change that's not addressed by scientists in Switzerland. And the links between the yellow-orange dots are where both of them are more or less equally addressing the issue. So this is a way for us to see how you can map knowledge in Switzerland and map the scientists at work, and also find new areas of research or of interviews for journalists. And finally, as was mentioned this morning in one of the talks by Wouter, the idea was to, of course, adapt the tool to journalists. So we are currently working with journalists in Radio-Télévision Suisse. We made the tool responsive, and we are ongoing right now with quantitative, qualitative analysis. We are adapting it to media contexts in daily basis. And then we want to adapt it to Avid Experts so that you can access the website, which is open access, and directly see all these maps, or at least some of these maps. So to conclude, we built, we hope, a robust, effective tool that helps map large semantic databases. It can be applied to any type of database in multiple languages with multiple search options. And it's a new effective tool, not only for journalists, but also for anyone who is seeking to identify experts. For instance, when you organize a conference, it can be quite useful to identify experts in different fields of knowledge that could talk in your conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agathe. Since you will also not be on the panel with us, unfortunately, maybe we take one or two questions. I start with one because I need to ask it. So we had this morning these great sessions about investigative journalists who look for news stories and have news sources or anonymous sources. Of course, my experience in communication has been a bit different. So when journalists contact me, sometimes or often, the others, not the investigative ones, they want the same people over and over again. So they're not necessarily looking for the expert, but for the same head right? So and you try to bring diversity into that, right? So how do you see that effect that is, again, it's not just technology, as we said this morning?
Yeah, that's true. Well, actually, what we see is what we are starting to see when we test it with journalists. It's really interesting. Is that you can change the head. You can have new people come in. After a while, you have to, because anyway, people know them too much. But only if it's not rush hour and the guest for the evening has cancelled and it's 10 minutes before they start the show. In that case, they run and they call the person they know. So we have something to that effect. We also have a journalist telling us that it's much more difficult for women to agree to talk at the last minute than for men who would just accept to do it. So we are also discussing this with the universities to see how they can ask their researchers, or maybe do some media training to convey this information to researchers too. Excellent, thanks.
Questions from the audience for Agathe? Yes, Suraj.
I don't know if I'm supposed to ask questions as a panelist, but since you are leaving, I just wanted to make a comment that I think maybe you have some thought about. So if I understand well, in order to kind of have really a better picture of experts, you are going to cross-correlate it with, for example, P3 of SNSF. That's very good, but at the same time, let's not forget that SNSF, I'm a customer of SNSF.
Of course.
The way it is that they actually tell you, ask one project every 4 years, and usually it should be fundamental research, which means that there is a very big distance between the topic that you find in experts who have SNSF projects and real applications. Yes. Because these are really, so there is InnoSwiss in Switzerland, there are other, so it looks like, at least in case of EPFL, you are better off to look at grants database. I don't know if there are privacy issues for that, but this is probably a better source. Are you looking at this, or is it just SNSF?
No, this is a very, very good point. Thank you very much for bringing it up. No, we're not only, the SNSF was the first test. We wanted to try how it was working. We're also looking at the ORCID database. And also we want to, in the next, we are redoing Avid Expert right now. And in it, researchers will have a hand on their page. In Avid Expert right now, they have their own page with all their interventions in the media. But we're filling it for them. So we will, in the future, we'll also fill it for them, but we will also give them a hand so that they can complete the page. We also would like to make it a place where they can initiate a discussion with journalists, or where they can submit new topics to journalists if they wish to. So yes, that's an excellent point. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Any more questions from the audience? Yeah, there's one in the back. Thank you. Mike is coming.
Thank you. We saw this a lot during the COVID crisis. What chances would conspirationist doctor have to be labeled as an expert? Because if it depends on their exposure, we know that there were a lot of exposure of conspirationists, depending on the media, of course, but...
Yes, what we did right now is that we consider as experts, this is why it's a partnership with the 34 institutions of higher knowledge in Switzerland, in Western-speaking Switzerland. We consider experts people who are emanating from universities and higher schools of knowledge. It's a huge question, because of course the journalists, they are telling us, and we know that experts are not only people in the universities, but they're also, some people are valid, some are not, some are complotists in the population, and we have to make a difference. Right now, we're working specifically with the schools, so they are more or less labeled as such, Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I think it's a topic we'll come back also during the panel. What is an expert? It's a great question. Thanks a lot, Agathe, for having been with us.
Welcome. Thank you.
And it's a great also...